everybody, man? It is your boys, man, back with another episode on the Cam and T podcast, man. I am your co-host, T, and we got my boy here, as always, my brother from another mother, Cam. What's going on, bro? We on a different day this week. Happy Thursday, my brother. How you
Yep,
doing?
I'm good, man. No complaints on my end. Like I said, I just got back from a work trip, so apologies for the delay, y'all. But we back, and I'm excited for this one, man. How you doing, T?
I'm doing good, bro. I'm doing really good, man. I'm out here chilling. You know what I'm saying? Getting ready for the Cinco de Mayo week. I know a lot of
Oh
people
yeah,
will be out and about this weekend and stuff like that. So I don't know. I might pop out a little bit, see what's going on. But
yeah.
I'm excited. Just living, bro.
Shoot,
For real.
let me find out you outside on
Let me
what is
not
that?
get you started. You gonna have me in the
Yeah,
club.
let me find out you outside. Hey y'all, hey, run up when y'all get in here. I see some of y'all run up the chat right now and tell T it's time to get back outside, man.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what's going on. But yeah, I'm doing good, bro. We're gonna have a really good show for y'all tonight. The draft just passed last week, a week from tonight, actually. The draft was taking place. And we got a lot to talk about, man. It was a really good draft, a really crazy draft, just in general. Just a lot going on, man. But yeah, we're gonna talk about that today. We got a special guest coming on today that's gonna talk about the draft. He's really good with the draft as well. So we're gonna talk about that as well. Y'all really in the chat saying T time, get outside.
Get
T time,
outside, bro. I told you. I
yo, look
tried.
at this. We
Look,
outside this weekend.
listen,
T,
man.
it's time for you to turn up. We outside all summer.
We had the section ready for T, y'all. We had the section ready for him. It, it's
Y'all
it's
crazy. Y'all
it's
crazy.
it's time,
I
man.
might come out. We'll see. I might come out this
Yeah,
weekend. But
yeah.
we got a good show in store for y'all today, man. We're gonna be really just going over the draft that took place last week. Um, and we got our special guest coming on today. He's really into the draft. He does a really good job covering the draft on, Twitter. Definitely when it comes to the draft season, and really any time of the season, he's one of my favorite followers because he always just very, informative. Like he's giving us a lot of good stuff and his evaluations, for the players in the draft. We have our guy from Twitter, Jared Feinberg. Welcome to the show, bro.
Yes,
We got
sir.
our
How's it
guy
going?
here,
How's it
man.
going, boys?
Man, welcome
Good,
to the
bro.
show, bro.
Good.
We're glad to have you, man. Again,
Yep.
it's been a long time in the making because we've been wanting to get you on, but definitely
Yep.
since the draft just ended, we felt like this was the perfect time for you to come on, bro. So we appreciate you pulling up on us today, man. We appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Anytime.
Yeah, man.
Sure.
So Cam, I'll go ahead and let you ask first because y'all actually are
Okay.
somewhat kind of colleagues because y'all, kind of work together with the draft stuff and all that and Panthers stuff. So I'll let you go ahead and ask and get everything
Okay.
kicked off.
Okay. Cool. Yeah. All right, Jared. So, like I said, first thing we really want to ask you is just tell us your story. Tell us your background. How'd you get to, where you are now with the draft evaluations and all that good stuff. And also tell the people about Cat Crave and kind of your angles when you write for Cat Crave because I know you have a very specific type of article that you like to put out.
hmm Yeah. So I started. So my football fandom didn't really start until when Cam Newton started playing, or when Cam Newton was at Auburn. I fell in love with the game of football. His Heisman Trophy season, followed him to Carolina. Been a Panther fan since, and I love this organization. Love this franchise. Win, loss. I started getting into the NFL draft probably probably middle school. And then I started doing draft evaluations during my junior year, which was the 2018 NFL draft. So I think I just got done with my 7th NFL draft doing draft evaluations, and it's getting funner every single time. I mean, the quarterback discourse, I believe, has gotten a little bit worse over the last couple of
Yeah.
seasons,
Yeah.
but I think that just goes to show how much the community has grown. And since I started doing this, the community has just exploded. I mean, I got to shout out the pioneer of the draft community, Mel Kiper. Now, he may not be the same guy we used to grow up with, but Mel Kiper is the pioneer of the draft community.
Yeah.
So I he's one of the bigger reasons why I'm doing this. Also, shout out to Jordan Reed. of ESPN.
Yeah.
I've known him for a little while. He always gives me some good advice in the DMs, and he's a great guy, great someone to like learn the game from, and he's played the quarterback position. I've asked him about stuff pertaining to, okay, so what's going on with this quarterback's mechanics? Like I'll send him clips trying to understand what a quarterback is doing, and he does a great job of reaching out quickly as he can and always responding. So Reed is one of the reasons why I'm doing this right now. But for Cat Crave, I do a mailbag after every game during the season. I haven't done a mailbag in quite some time, and I plan on doing so this month. I don't know when this month, but I'm hoping to do one soon. I'll also be writing an article about, you know, what type of roles these rookies are going to have this upcoming season, or at least for the first year or two of their rookie contract. But I really enjoy my time at Cat Crave. Shout out to you, Cam, and also shout out to Ricky Rains. Ricky was on here on this show a couple weeks ago, I think right before the draft. And man, I'll tell you this, guys, he did a great job at that draft event Thursday night. Like he did a terrific job. And if he's watching this, shout out to him. And I could tell he was exhausted when we had our night 2 spaces. Like he wasn't giving as much feedback as I was expecting, but understandably so. Like he was on cloud 9 that Thursday night. So shout out to him, man.
Yeah. Shout out to Ricky, man. He was on the show last week, man. He's great. We love Ricky. We're big Ricky fans. So shout out to Ricky for sure. I think I want to ask a question about the whole draft process, and we talked about this a little off camera. So you've been doing this for a couple years now. What is a guy that you hit on and you just like, and it worked out? And what was a guy that you thought was going to be immaculate and he turned out to be terrible? Or no, let's not say terrible, but just it didn't work out. Give us like one example of each, like of those situations happening. Because at this point, you have enough under your belt to kind of have some of those.
Ooh. That's a good question. I'd have to pull up my spreadsheet of previous drafts, but that would take me like 10, 15 minutes to do. I don't want to take up a bunch of time. But one of the more notable prospects that I felt like I hit on big time was, I believe he was a top 5 prospect on my board in 2019, former Ole Miss wide receiver DK Metcalf. I thought he was at the time my highest grade receiver ever, but that was my second year of doing draft analysis. That was my senior year of high school as well. So when I was watching Metcalf, I was like, this dude, you put him in the right offense, you let him play vertically, and he's gonna ball out. Landed in a right place with Seattle with Russell Wilson, who at the time was throwing some of the more beautiful deep balls you will ever see. DK Metcalf is certainly one of the guys that I felt like I was like, I know this pick is going to hit well. And I definitely had a slight miss on AJ Brown. I was a little hesitant with his game overall, but I'm glad I was wrong. And that's the thing when it comes to draft analysis. You want to be wrong. You want to be wrong about a prospect you're lower on. And I've certainly had those prospects over the years. I've had some guys that were graded in the 5th round that are quality starters on their current football team and are, I think, may have just signed their second contract or stuff like that. One of the guys I did miss, and may rest in peace, Jeff Gladney from TCU, cornerback. He didn't have, and with all due respect to him, he didn't have the greatest start to his career. And then, of course, he tragically passed away, I believe, a year or two into his rookie contract. And it was really disappointing. But that was probably one of more of my misses. Henry Ruggs, I think, of course, stands out big time as a miss. Would you call it a miss, considering like he did ball out, but I guess it's just
that's a different circumstance
following all the circumstances. So I'm trying to think of other prospects I may have missed on. Oh God!
Well, to make you feel better,
I'd have to pull it up.
Yeah, I'm about to say to make you feel better. I'll tell you one. I always brag about him because I missed on him terribly. Justin Herbert. I got him
Yeah,
so wrong.
same here.
I thought he was going to be Marcus Mariota 2.0. I was just so
Same
wrong
here.
about him. Like I was just so wrong about Justin Herbert. So
And I
don't feel
think,
bad. We
yeah,
all had our misses.
I think I had a low first round grade on him, so I guess I was higher on him, but at the same time, I may have been in the middle
Yeah,
of what he could be as a prospect or as a player at the next level. To be honest with you, I did not expect that quality of play in his
yeah,
first year.
Yeah,
Like the
yeah,
way he balled out in Chicago, or not Chicago, in Los Angeles,
LA.
his first year, man, that was impressive. And especially in a time when he barely had any preparation, I would believe during the summer, that was a pandemic year.
yeah.
And what he did in 15 games as a starter. He only started 15 games, threw for over 4,300 yards at least. I mean, it was an impressive debut. Now, I would like to see Herbert like continue to progress as a quarterback, but what he offers right now, he's easily a top 10 quarterback in this league without doubt.
Yep. No question. Yeah, I agree. I think I definitely missed on Herbert as well. Um Again, it was just listening to, a lot of people. They were saying that um they were saying that he wasn't a good leader. They were saying that some people were saying that he didn't have, which is crazy for them to say this, but they were saying that he didn't have the best arm, which clearly that's false. You know what I'm saying? I was like,
That
I was like,
was
how did this
How
like
does someone
happen?
come up with the idea that he has a bad arm
Right.
when on tape he had arguably the best arm in
The
that
strongest arm
class?
in the class.
And
Yeah.
Joe Burrow and Tua were probably better prospects than him during that class
Yeah.
for the
Yeah.
consensus. But I mean, of course, there were some people that had Herbert
Right.
as QB1, which I respect a ton.
And really, when you look at that quarterback class as a whole, not to get off subject, but when you look at that class as a whole, I mean, it's just so talented. Like that class is what I think we can kind of say, and this is where I'll say this is what was my miss. That class is what I think we all thought the next class was going to be, with Lawrence, Fields, Wilson, Lance.
Yup.
You know what I'm saying? But I mean, we kind of took for granted that class had Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Love now, and Jalen Hurts. So, and then the 21 class, I think that's the same class Brock Purdy was in, right? Am I
Mhm.
tripping, or is that the class after that?
2022 was his
The
rookie year.
22. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So, but
It's funny
regardless,
that the last pick in the draft ends up being the best quarterback of that draft class, which
Yeah.
is very
Yep.
impressive.
That was the year Derek Brown came out too, wasn't it?
2022? No.
No.
2020 was the year Brown came out.
Yeah,
He came
Brown
out with Herbert though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm tripping. My bad. Sorry.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
he came out with Herbert. Yeah, but yeah, Purdy, he really did. I mean that because so he was in the class with Willis and Pickett
Yeah, he was in that
and
bad.
Ritter.
He was in that bad.
Sewell was in that same class too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that class was elite pretty much everywhere else except quarterback.
Yeah,
And that's the
except
crazy
quarterback.
thing.
Yeah, they were good.
Okay, so Jared, so give us, if you can, give us kind of your process and when you evaluate talent. So like, for example, let's just say, give us, everybody likes quarterbacks. So talk, if you want to give us a specific example on quarterbacks,
Mhm.
and then maybe a defensive position, maybe corner, if you could.
Yeah, so for quarterback's probably one of my favorite positions to evaluate,
Yeah.
just because of like the obsession with the position during the draft class. Like if the quarterback class is not as strong compared to other years, it may not have the same attention as it would in
Yeah.
previous years. So thankfully, I believe the 2021 class, or not, no, the 2022 class was more of an outlier pre-draft. But when it comes to the rest of the group, or last several years, especially since I started this in 2018, I've been blessed with all of these really solid to elite draft classes at the position. So at quarterback, and this goes with every position, I look at 10 traits for each position. Quarterback, wide receiver, you name it. At quarterback, I look at accuracy. I look at arm strength, arm talent overall. I look at body mechanics, lower half, upper half. What does their upper half look like? Do they have a good release angle? Is their release point inconsistent with where they want to go with the football? Lower half mechanics, is their base too wide? Is it too narrow? It's stuff like that. I'll also look at how they read the field, how they do in progressions. I'll also see if they're mobile enough. And usually, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks over the last several drafts that have elite mobility. So if you have good mobility or at least elite mobility, you're going to grade pretty highly for me. Let me look at. I have last year's spreadsheet pulled up. So I'll go ahead and just list out the rest. Decision making, out of structure ability, poise, pocket awareness, and size overall. So that's kind of my process for quarterbacks, the way I grade them. My grading scale is going to change this upcoming season, so I'm kind of adjusting to it a little bit. I believe the process I've had with my current grading scale over the last probably 4 years, feel like there's a change that I need to do. So I'm going to spend the offseason kind of like tinkering with it, kind of messing around with it. But on defensively, probably one of my favorite positions defensively to watch is pass rusher. You want to look at their first step explosiveness. If they have good hip flexibility or just overall flexibility, do they have good bend, good hands, good hand usage in the run game and the pass game? Do they have a good rush plan? If they don't have a good rush plan, they're going to need some development at the next level. And if you do have a rush plan overall, I believe that will kind of speed up your process or development overall at the next level. So, for example, Austin Booker, who was drafted by the Chicago Bears in the 5th round, I thought he had a good enough pass rush arsenal to be effective at the next level. And he's a younger prospect. He's 21 years old, redshirt sophomore, doesn't have a lot of playing time on his hands. Like, I think this past season at Kansas, he was a new transfer from Minnesota, came to Kansas, only has about 600 snaps for his career overall. So he'll need time to kind of get adjusted to the speed of the game, but his pass rush, can't speak tonight, can give him some playing time early on as a third down specialist. Another thing I'm going to look at pass rusher is their lateral mobility. How are they going to do in pass coverage when they have to do coverage drops? If they're an outside linebacker, how are they going to look in that area? Even as a 4-3 defensive end lining up at the 7 tech or 5 tech, how are you going to do in coverage drops when you're assigned that? Run defense, play strength overall, versatility, athletic ability, and overall motor effort and physicality. Those are some of the stuff I look at pass rusher. So I do my deep dives. I'm still learning every position. There are definitely some positions I'm still working on in terms of better knowing how to evaluate that position. I will say probably the weakest position I'm at in terms of evaluations is offensive line, especially offensive tackle and interior offensive line. I think it's probably one of the more harder position groups to evaluate, in my opinion. You could argue linebacker, you could probably argue safety, but for me, offensive tackle, interior offensive line, that's kind of where I'm still growing and still asking people for advice, asking, hey, what is this tackle doing in this pass set, or what is this pass set? So I'm still learning about the game and how players play different positions. And a little bit of a side note, when I was at the draft event, Captain Munnerlyn was there. Panther fans know who that is. You should know who that is. I was hoping he gets like 5 minutes of his time. Kind of ask him, hey, how do you play the cornerback position? How would you do this or that? Just 5 minutes of his time. I wasn't able to because it seemed like he wanted to spend time with all the former players that were there at the event. So I didn't want to bother him. I wanted to respect his privacy and his space. So overall, that's kind of just how I, for example, evaluate the quarterback position, evaluate the edge rusher position. Always kind of adjusting how I view a prospect or how I view a position and I'm always trying to be a little bit more objective and a little bit more, how do I say this? Probably a little bit more strict in my grading. I
Yeah.
want to make sure I'm doing it right, and I have
Mhm.
no issue with being wrong on a prospect whatsoever.
Mhm.
That's a part of the learning curve. If
Yeah.
I'm wrong on a prospect, I'll go back and like, okay, what did I miss? What was there that I missed that I'm like, I need to evaluate that part of a player better. That's why I do. So it's an ever learning process. It's an ever learning game. I used to have in my bio all the time on Twitter, learning something new every day.
Yeah.
And opinions are always fluid. You know, you
Yeah.
Yeah.
learn something new every day, which can change your opinion. And
Yeah.
Mhm.
especially, and that is especially the case when it comes to draft prospects. Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometimes I'll have to take a second look at a prospect during the pre-draft eval,
Mhm.
and especially after the combine. For certain players, like Keon Coleman, I had to go back and look at his film, see if I missed anything. I didn't really miss anything. Felt like the play speed was better than the 40 time.
Yeah.
I think if you're a draft fan overall, you would probably understand there's a difference between play speed and a
Yeah.
40-yard time when
Yeah.
you're
Right.
not going to be lining up in a 3-point stance at wide receiver like it's the early 1980s or
Right.
Yeah.
the late 1970s. Like that's not going to happen anymore.
Right.
Right.
So it's like the combine's helpful when it comes to overall um lost my train of thought. When it comes to just overall athleticism, understanding
Yeah.
what a player can do,
Yeah.
what and sorry for the
You
sound
good,
in
man.
my
You good?
but when it comes to the combine, it's a good place to kind of confirm a player's athleticism,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
sometimes it doesn't give you the full picture, especially if a player doesn't perform to the expectation you had as an
Yeah.
athlete at the combine. So sometimes the tape helps out in that aspect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. Go ahead, Cam.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, T. I know you got strong feelings about the combine yourself.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's why. Yeah. See, for me, I'm more of a when I turn the film on, I see what I see.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's great because I feel like with if you've made it to this level, if you're going to the combine and stuff, I feel like we already know you're a workout warrior. Like we know that you wouldn't have made it this far if you were not a workout warrior. You have to be
Mhm.
dedicated to your body, working out and stuff like that to get to even be invited to the combine. So for me, I don't take the combine as maybe important as
Yep.
other possibly evaluators, like maybe like you do and stuff like that. Because to me, if I turn on that game film, I know what it is. You can't shy away from the
Yeah.
game film. To me, the game film never lies. Now
That last comment in the comments is exactly how I think.
yeah,
Exactly.
film over combine. Yeah, and that's just kind of that's the combine does help. Don't get me wrong,
It
because
does. Yeah.
I think sometimes some people's like athleticism not be on display as much. Like for example, Tommy Tremble. We're talking about the Panthers in a few minutes. Tommy Tremble is a very athletic, like we don't use him like that, but he's pretty athletic. Like he was
Yeah.
very athletic at Notre Dame as well, but they just didn't use him like more in an open concept type of offense. I think he could be a possible receiving threat. I know he's more so used like a utility type of tight end, but for example, if you turn on the film, you'll be able to see he can catch balls down the field,
Yeah.
Yeah.
stuff like that. So I think the
Absolutely.
film is always the indicator, but I do think again that the combine may open up some athletic things that you didn't know was there, pretty much.
Yeah. I
For
think
sure.
I think a guy like I always look at guys that pop out at the combine. So like for example, in my opinion, and we're gonna dive into this a little bit later with Jared, but
Mhm.
I look at obviously we're all Clemson guys, we're all
Mhm.
Clemson fans, so we
Yep.
watch. I know for me, I watch what the Clemson guys are gonna do at the combine. I like to see what they do, and in my opinion, I think a guy like Ruka Rororo really upped his stock because of the combine. Now his tape was already really solid if you was paying
Mhm.
attention, if you was watching. Like he was a really good defensive tackle. Y'all know I've been high on Root for a while now.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And so he was already solid, but that combine performance really, I think, is what upped his stock into a second round pick. Now I know that was kind of a head scratching pick by a lot of people, but still for him to be selected in the second round, a lot of that was due to his work at the combine. And then another guy, Braden Fisk, I don't know if he went. Did he go second round as well to the
He went
Rams?
second
Yeah,
round.
he did. Yeah, he went
So he
out
went second.
30.
39.
Yeah, the pick
Yeah.
we traded him with.
Right.
Yeah,
Oh, the trade.
Rams
Yeah,
traded up
that's
to
right.
39
Okay.
to take him. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So there, I think Braden Fisk also his combine again. It was another player whose tape was pretty solid. You know what I'm saying? But
Mhm.
that combine performance really
put him
upped
on.
his stock. You know what
Yeah,
I'm saying? Now, again, kind of like what y'all was saying. Sometimes the combine can fool you, though. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes the pro day can fool you. You know, we've seen a lot of players do some crazy stuff at the pro day, do some crazy stuff at the combine that doesn't necessarily translate to an NFL offense or defense. You know what I'm saying? The way that we would like it to be. You know what I'm saying? But again, the combine I think is just super important for those players who are kind of fringe between maybe a day 3 and a day 2 pick or
Yep.
a day 2 and a day 1 pick. So like for example, Xavier Worthy, right? Like we can kind of agree that even though he was a great wide receiver at Texas,
Yeah.
the
He was
film
already
looked very
fast.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was already fantastic. But that
Mhm.
40-yard dash time really made him go from, possibly pick 33, 34, 35, whatever, to, the Chiefs trading up to what, 28 to get him, 29
Yeah.
to get him.
Hmm.
So again, the combine just it if you put in if you're a good player and you put in a great performance at the combine, that's gonna up your stock. And then on the other side of things, me and T, we both like Troy Franklin when he was at Oregon,
Yeah.
but his combine performance just unfortunately was
A
very
little
subpar. You know
inconsistent.
what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't as good as some of the other guys. Like Xavier Leggett, combine was fantastic. You know what I'm saying? Keon Coleman's combine was a little his 40 time was kind of rough, but the combine, like the drills, fantastic. You know what I'm saying? Troy Franklin, unfortunately, 40 time and the drills just
Nah.
didn't really hit, and he
And
dipped into a 5th round pick.
yeah, and I'll also say that the interviews and the medicals before the drills, like that, I think that's probably the more important part
Yeah.
Yeah.
for teams overall. Like for us fans and for us media members, that we see what we see at the combine in terms of drills, in terms of like the 40-yard dash, the vertical jump. We see that, but we don't see the interviews. And those interviews matter so much. At the Senior Bowl, it matters a ton.
Yeah.
And I will say that the one-on-ones, like a lot of the drills at the Senior Bowl too, those matter a ton, especially if you're a smaller school prospect. And we saw that we saw a smaller school prospect go in the top 20 or in the top 25. Quinyon Mitchell from Toledo. Quinyon Mitchell, best cornerback of the draft, went to the Eagles. Eagles finally drafted a cornerback in the first round.
Yeah.
But the combine is grown into something so much more than it is already. But personally, I agree with Deontay. The film matters the most. It will always come down to the film.
Yeah.
And again, I have no issues with being wrong on a prospect. And so I remember someone telling me when Ricky and I were talking about Jalen Polk, you two know how big of a fan we were of Jalen Polk. And someone commented at me and was like, "You're going to have to change up your whole draft analysis if you miss on Jalen Polk." I'm like, I don't have to change my process entirely. I can adjust, and that's okay. That's the whole reason why I do this, to learn. And if I miss out on Polk as a prospect, it is what it is. I'm not going to be butthurt over it. It'll be disappointing to see a player you like not turning out in the league, but it's good to understand, hey, where did I miss? What did I miss with Polk to see why he didn't translate to the next level? And sometimes it's stuff you don't see on on tape. Sometimes it could be a player's attitude off the field. It could be how he is in the locker room. Like, that's why the interviews are so important. That's why scouts go out to games to see how they interact with teammates on the sidelines. And to kind of understand how they do in big time environments. So it's Deontay Jalen McMillan. I was hoping he would be there at 101. You know, it
Yeah.
is what it is. But
Yeah, don't watch the wide receivers, man.
They were good, man.
This was
they were good.
This was so. I had so much fun watching wide receivers this year.
Yeah.
This,
I wanna start transitioning into the draft. I know we were just talking about Rook, and we're gonna talk about some of the teams we felt like did a good job in the draft and felt like they did bad. But I gotta ask you, the talk of the week has been about Atlanta taking Michael Penix. That's been the talk for the last week now at this point. They're still talking about it on ESPN. They were just talking about it 5 minutes ago. I was just watching. How do you feel about that? Like, just in general, tell me, how do you feel about just Atlanta? To me, I feel like the Falcons don't really have like a plan. It seems like, okay, are we trying to win now? Or are we trying to win in 2 years? Like, what are we really doing? How did you feel about the Michael Penix pick at 8, which really threw the whole draft in limbo too, by the way?
I was, and excuse my language, I was like, what the fuck are we? What are we doing?
Yeah, no,
what in the hell are they doing? And that was the same reaction everyone else had at the draft event last Thursday night. And when someone on Twitter spoiled the pick, I was like, damn it. But I was so shocked as hell. I was like, I'm gonna wait to see everyone else's reaction. And I was like, I'm not going to tell Ricky. I'm not going to spoil him. I'm going to let everyone else react. And just taking in the reaction, everyone was like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
And there was a Panther fan in the back that yelled, F the Falcons.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is karma in some way. This has to be karma in some way. But I still don't get the pick. In some ways I understand it because they need a future at the position. But Penix is 24 years old. He's going to be a 24-year-old rookie. He has an extensive medical history. And I wasn't that big of a fan. I wasn't like a first round. I didn't have a first round grade on Penix. I had a third round grade on Penix. Like, in Bo Nix, I had a low third. Like, I was not the biggest fans of Penix and Nix as prospects in this draft. Now, I understand they have skill sets that may translate, but there was inconsistencies there. I was just like, they got to have time to develop. But unfortunately, by the time they start, who knows? It might be until they're 27, 28 years old.
Yeah, man.
When they start on their rookie contract. Like, who's to say Kirk Cousins doesn't play until 40? You know, if he's able to stay healthy. Right. He could play until 40. And then Penix is 28 years old, end of his rookie contract. Then he's going on a second rookie contract or a second contract potentially if he plays well enough. And by the time that one ends, he could be 32, 33 years old.
Yeah, that's
so
the crazy part.
It's just like the ceiling is limited because of his age.
Yeah.
And his save was a little inconsistent. Like, I liked his save, don't get me wrong, but there were so inconsistencies that I was just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
So they could have taken defense at 33. They couldn't take it a lot too at not 33, at 8. I'm just like, wow. Atlanta, and I can pull up the rest of the draft for Atlanta. They were Brugler ranked them as 32nd.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just like,
I agree.
That's what happens when you overdraft at a position like that.
Yeah.
They had two their first two picks, again, Penix and then Rook Roro. Like, those were both kind of head scratcher picks. I think Rook was a great pick. I just think a lot of people thought that Rook was going to be there either in round 3 or later in round 2. You know what I'm saying? And then again, Penix at 8, especially after they come out and say that they wanted Latu they wanted to trade back up for Latu. I just think they should have just took Latu at 8. You know what I'm saying? And then try to trade back up for Penix. You know?
Penix, yeah.
I find it so odd that if they liked Latu that much to want to trade back into the first round to get him, why not take him at 8. Why not? Like, I believe he was a good enough player to be well deserving of a top 10 pick. He was a top 10 prospect on my board. Like, if you think that highly of a prospect, you take him at that spot at 8, not a quarterback like Penix who could have been available at any time in the first round. If you wanted to trade back up for Penix, that's fine by me. I have no issue. I don't have a serious issue with that. It's just the process. I don't know. And I think we both, or 3 of us, saw, I think, that picture of Arthur Blank talking to either Raheem Morris or the Falcons GM, and he's probably like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Right? Like, this is the type of move that could get you a contract extension down the line, or it can get you fired next year.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I said it on Twitter. This was, I personally thought the Falcons draft was 2019 Raiders bad. Like, I thought it was terrible. Like, I'm not going to lie. I thought it was a terrible draft. It did not make a lot of sense to me. I do like the Braylon Trice pickup at 75. I thought that was a really good pick for them.
Trice and Borles were solid picks.
I think those were solid picks for them. I'll give them that.
The process was just bad.
Yeah, you just don't pay Kirk Cousins 2 years, essentially, $100 million guaranteed, and go pick up, a guy, an aging rookie that's, like you said, he's about to be 24, I think, next month. It's just, and he's had a lot of injury problems himself. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. Like, I'm still scratching my head about it because I don't get it. The Falcons, I don't know what their plan is. I don't really know if they're playing for it now or the future. They're saying we're drafting for the future, but they're also like, it's just a lot going on with them. They don't seem to have a clear direction of what they're doing. So I guess this is going to get me to my next question. Besides the Falcons, I think we all kind of I think we all agree that the Falcons probably had the worst drive in the NFL this past year. Who do you think is another team that's like, that just wasn't a good draft? Give me one team, or even if you feel like a team reached on a
couple
player.
Teams. Yeah.
Let's see. I'm just scrolling through the list of draft classes on the Athletic, and Jacksonville stands out outside their first round pick. Cleveland. Well, honestly, I don't mind Cleveland because their first few picks, Mike Hall at 54, I like that pick. I mean, local talent, good player, good defensive tackle, Zach Center, good offensive guard prospect. I'll probably say the Broncos after Atlanta. As just.
I was thinking Broncos.
I think Sean Payton had a conviction for Bo Nix, and I think that was very clear throughout the entire process. And they took Nix at 12, and I expect him to be the backup for Zach Wilson early on, unless he ends up winning the job in training camp, which just goes to show you how much of a shit show the Denver Broncos are right now. And it's kind of great for anyone that has an anti-Sean Payton agenda, which props to you. I appreciate that.
How about to say Cam hates Sean Payton?
I'll make sure not to. So then he doesn't go into a tangent. I know he will. The only good value pick I felt like, well, actually two good value picks for Denver. 4th round pick at 102, Troy Franklin. I was shocked Troy Franklin actually fell that far in the draft. The lowest I could have seen him get drafted was probably mid-3rd round. I was like, that would make sense. But 4th round, that surprised me a ton. Audric Estime, running back from Notre Dame at 107. That was a good solid pick. But everything else, I'm like, Jonah Ellis at 76. I was just like, what? You're drafting that type. I mean, sure, that's too high. Like middle day 3, perfect. I just don't know. I don't know, man. They're. I do have this sense that there are some points where I feel like I could be an NFL GM. And I'm just.
If you watch what the Falcons did last week, I think we all 3 can be GMs.
I'm about to say.
Yeah.
If
Man,
you
we could have ran the Falcons draft through spaces. We could
Yeah,
have really
They
done
literally.
could
that.
have, bro. I mean, there was. I think it's funny because when I get to start talking about football, a lot of people. I mean, y'all probably get it too. They're like, "Man, you should be a GM. You should do this," because
Yeah.
it's like the rationale behind decision making to us. There's it seems like it's common sense, and then when team and it's funny because we can call out like this Penix and Kirk Cousins situation isn't going to work one way or another because
No.
you either overpaid Kirk Cousins for a couple year rental or whatever like that, you know what I'm saying, or for him to just sit on your bench, or B, you drafted Michael Penix Jr. at 8 for him to just sit on your bench,
Sit on your
contract
bench.
to expire. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You're gonna have to pick up a 5th-year option before he even gets a chance to play or something like that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? He might go out there and be trash at 28 years old. You know what I'm
Cause see
saying? Like
what happens if Kirk Cousins balls out for the next 2 years? Like, you know what I'm
now
saying? That puts Atlanta in a terrible situation if he
a
balls
terrible
out.
spot.
Because now you're
But
like,
I mean,
oh crap. We might
at the
have
same
to-
time, though, for Atlanta, I mean, they are like roster wise, they're in a good spot
Yeah.
because
They are.
like they have
They
a
are.
talented roster
yeah.
that even with if they had a Kirk Cousins type of play last season, they would have won the division
Yeah.
easily.
For sure.
But of course, they had Desmond Ritter, and thank God Desmond Ritter was a quarterback, and especially on that rainy Sunday afternoon in Charlotte. Yeah, that I was very tempted to go into that game. I saw the ticket prices. I'm like,
They were like $3 or something like that.
They were like $3. I was like,
yeah.
Some of them were like 10 and like at good seats. I was like, man, I might go to this game. Then I realized what the weather was like for the next day. I was like, oh, no thanks. I'm okay. And especially when it was going to be very cold that afternoon too. No.
Yeah.
Nope.
I got a question for you. So, we talked about rough drafts, Atlanta, Denver. Give me who do you think had the best drafts, and give me two great teams or two great drafts, and then give me like a sleeper pick, any round, any position, just a sleeper pick.
I think my favorite's definitely Pittsburgh. Favorite draft class is Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Not mad at
yeah.
it. They had
I mean, they just nailed it.
They went O-line heavy too, and they needed.
They went O-line heavy. Troy Fatanu, Washington offensive lineman, was their first round pick. Then they went Zach Frazier at 51. Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, that is just a home run first 2 picks. Then they went Rome Wilson at 84. I'm like, terrific value, and he's going to give you immediate impact, dynamic playmaking ability right away. Then they took Peyton Wilson at 98, which I thought was great value, considering the extensive injury history, plus being an older prospect, still a good player overall. I thought that was great value for Peyton Wilson. I was excited about that. Mason McCormick, a really rock solid guard who could also play center if you need him to. And then they added depth defensively with Logan Lee and then Ryan Watts. Very impressive draft from Pittsburgh. I think last year they had a really solid draft too, and that was headlined by Joey Porter. That was they've had some really solid drafts. And I think that just goes to show that even if they're not reaching their championship level of expectation, they are still adding talent and still adding good players on both sides of the ball. Another draft class I really like. I thought Arizona had a really strong class. Of course, you get a headline by who I believe is the best wide receiver prospect in the last decade or even more, probably since 2011 when Julio and AJ Green came through. Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, Darius Robinson at 27, Max Melton at 43, Trey Benson at 66. Those first 4 picks overall, great players. Stuff. Xavier Thomas, I think that's probably one of my favorite value picks overall at 5'138. I think he's going to give you he should see playing time next season just because of what he offers. Straight line athlete who's going corner well, who gives you a baseline pass rush arsenal like that. That's perfect. And then Dadrian Taylor Demerson, solid pick. He's gonna play all over the secondary. He could be your nickel. He could be your free safety, split safety, strong safety. He can come downhill and play the alley pretty well. That was a solid pick at the top of the 4th round or start of day 3. Arizona had a really strong draft class. Philly had a good class. Detroit. What surprised me honestly was Brugler had Chicago as the top draft class overall, which makes sense. You get Caleb Williams and Roma Dunze. You get the best punter in the draft in the 4th round. Right. Never draft specialists until the 7th round, or at least let them go undrafted and you go get them. Austin Booker, good value at 5'144". That was good value. Karen Amagier from Yale, offensive tackle, good value there. So I understand why Chicago is up there, but I think personally for me, taking a specialist at that high, I don't care how good you are. I don't care if you're the next Justin Tucker or the next Ray Guy. No. No. Please no. I get it, but no.
For me, 2 teams, obviously, first and foremost, I do want to give a shout out to Carolina because I thought they had a pretty good draft this year. Based off of the guys that they took. I'm really excited about. I know I was kind of rough on it on draft night, but I'm honestly excited about the Jonathan Brooks pick. The more I think about it, like he can mess around and be a franchise type guy. You know what I'm saying? Especially next to Bryce Young in the backfield. So I think that's going to be dope. Buffalo, man, I really like Buffalo class. I'm surprised. I'm not hearing a lot of people talk about it. I like Buffalo's class, and I think Keon Coleman is a great pick for them.
Real quick. I got to pull up Buffalo's real quick so then I can get a good idea.
I think Buffalo, man. I think they did a really good job, man. They got Ced Van Pran in the 5th round for at center. And then they got Dwayne Carter and Cole Bishop as well, and Ray Davis at running back. I think that's going to be a nice 1-2 punch with Cook up there. So I think they had a really good draft. Javon Solomon as well, edge rusher. I felt like we should have took him. I was looking at him. What pick was that?
He went 5'168", 5th round.
Yeah, I was hoping that Carolina could have got on their hands on a guy like that. But again, and then obviously, this team drafts well every year. The Baltimore Ravens, man, they knocked it out of the park once again.
Brother, I mean, come on. It's just not fair how they do this every year.
That was my number 1 choice. I was going to say the Ravens. I mean, coming out of this draft with TJ Tampa and Nate Wiggins is insane. Like, that's just good value. Both. Like I said, I had Nate Wiggins as my cornerback 1 pretty much this whole
Good teams take advantage of this type of stuff.
Yeah.
I'll say this: the Raiders didn't have that bad of a draft either. I thought some people are questioning the Brock Bowers pick, but I'm like, what's the issue with having Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer on the same team?
Right.
You have 2 very good young tight ends who could ball out at the next level and could be the best tight end duo overall. Like if you're looking, I'm not saying they're going to get to that type of level, but it kind of reminds me of Aaron Hernandez and Rob Gronkowski with the Patriots, but it's not going to get to that level. It would be great if it does, but having 2 good tight ends on your roster is not a bad thing. And then they took Jackson Powers Johnson at 44. Great pick there. The New Hampshire running back Dylan Labe, that was a good pick. Trey Taylor in the 7th round. Delmar Glaze. There's some solid picks for the Raiders there. Let's see. I'm trying to look through. Washington had a nice draft. Washington did.
That's the other team I was going to bring up was the Commanders. I was going to say the Commanders I thought had a really good draft. And I'm not going to lie. I like the Patriots too. I think they had a really good draft. I like Drake May. The Javon Baker draft pick looks tremendous. Jalen Polk, I know that was somebody that y'all was really high on, and I like him too. I think the Patriots did a really good job too, to be honest with you. So
And
those
they got Jaheim Bell in the 7th too.
yeah,
Like, that's a pretty good pick for them.
Class, man. I'm not gonna lie. So
yeah, looking at the Commanders class, I mean, they traded back at 40 with the Eagles, which gave them another 2nd round pick. So that still gave them 6 top 100 picks, but these are their top 100 picks. Jane Daniels, Johnny Newton, which he should have never fallen that far. He was my top ranked defensive player in this class. Mike Sandstro was a great pick. Ben Sinnott is your future at tight end. Brandon Coleman gives you depth across the offensive line, especially at left tackle and at left guard. But then Luke McCaffrey at 3 or at 100, I was like, taking him that high? I feel there's a little bit of nepetism there. You know, there's definitely nepotism there with the McCaffrey pick, but McCaffrey's a solid prospect. I didn't get the chance to, well, actually, no, that's a lie. Didn't get the chance to evaluate him. Had a 5th round grade on him, so that was a big reach in my opinion. But McCaffrey was a solid prospect. I didn't have.
He had a really good combine.
When I was at Niner Times last school year. Got to watch Rice come to Charlotte. That was my first game I ever went to as a member of the media, and got to see Luke McCaffrey kind of in person. I was like, wow, this guy a really neat skill set that is draftable, and showed he did well at Senior Bowl. End up being a top 100 pick, or literally the 100th pick in the draft. But Commanders had a really strong draft, especially with their first 5 to 6 selections. Man, good job from Adam Peters in his first draft.
Yeah. He could. Sure. I won't. Go ahead, Cam. You was about to say something.
I was just gonna ask. I was just gonna move on to the next question. So if you want something, I was gonna say this. So again, being Clemson guys, this is what I wanted to get to earlier. Being Clemson guys, I gotta know, what's your take on why defensive play? Actually, 2 questions. What's your take on why defensive players from Clemson seem to fall? What's good with Nate Wiggins was it felt like, again, I'm not saying that first round pick, he went to the perfect spot for him, you know what I'm saying? But I feel like a lot of people, we always have somebody that's a top ranked prospect,
Andrew
and then
Booth.
they get into the evaluation process, and for some reason they end up falling and sliding down the list. And then my man Trotter fell a long way. So what's your take on that? Why do Clemson prospects seem to fall?
Your guess is as good as mine, man. Like, it's, I do my best to take out subjectivity as a Clemson fan when I go into my evaluations with Clemson players. I always want to be fair and balanced when it comes to these evaluations, but your guess is as good as mine, man. I really don't understand why there are, like, I was a big fan of Aurora. I think it was a slight reach, but not enough to be like, oh, I don't like this at all. I'm like, that's okay. That's okay at 35. Wiggins going at 20, was it 29 or 30 to 30 to the Ravens. I thought that was great value. I think he was my 26 overall prospect, so it was really good value there. But I was a little bit higher on Trotter. He should have gone the 3rd round, in my opinion. I get there were people that were both high and very low on him, but I can't really give you any good solid information on why Clemson players are falling, but you do see them having an impact at the next level, and I think it goes to show that I tend to like Clemson players, especially on defense, a little bit more just because of the amount of effort they bring on a down-to-down basis, and it's just like they always have non-stunt motors. I'm like, every year I'm like in my notes when it comes to a Clemson defensive player. I'm trying to think who last year's.
Brian
Brazil. Brazil, like right at the top of my notes, high motor effort player.
Yeah.
Who's another one?
Yeah, I know Miles Murphy was in that draft class.
Miles Murphy, same thing. Yeah. Yeah, my mind's going blank on some other ones, but like even in previous draft classes, like I was always writing up high motor effort player, player for every single defensive prospect from Clemson. I was like, how in the world is this happening? Like, I mean, us Clemson fans, we saw it every Saturday.
We see
it. Even last season when they had their worst season in the Dabo Sweeney era since
he feel good.
He got there. So, I'm always impressed with Clemson prospects. I again try to be very objective when it comes to their evaluations, but again, your guess is as good as mine, Cam. I can't give a good answer on that.
Because for me, I mean, even another guy, Tyler Davis, I didn't understand why he was falling like that.
Went all the way,
I mean, he was free falling.
Yeah.
6th round to the Rams, and I think that's a good spot for him. But I just think players like that, and somebody said it on the time. I can't think who it was, but they brought up a good point that Clemson likes to rotate guys out all the time, and they're so loaded on defense that it's kind of hard to get a fair evaluation if these guys are actually really good or if just the system is good. But at the same time, I implore these GMs to think about it. Think about where the top defensive tackles in the NFL are coming from right now. A lot of them are coming from Clemson. You got Clemson. I would say Clemson and Clemson, Alabama, Mississippi State, probably your top 3 in terms of defensive tackle. You know what I'm saying? Clemson got Wilkins, Lawrence, Jarrett, Reeder, and it's somebody else I'm missing too. But all of these guys just came from Clemson. Brzee is there. You know what I'm saying?
Brzee is still like, gotta wait and see for first year or something like that.
But he had a solid rookie season.
He had a solid rookie
season.
I'm not disputing that. No.
You know what I'm saying? And so I just think that, it definitely didn't make sense for me to see Tyler Davis fall. Linebacker and cornerback, I kind of get it because there's been some Clemson cornerbacks that come in the league that didn't quite pan out. But then again, I don't think the guys, none of them, except for maybe Mac Alexander, that's your boy T. I think he was the only one for me that I could say was probably better than Nate Wiggins. I think that AJ Terrell and Nate Wiggins was probably on the same level while they was at Clemson. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I just think Wiggins should have a similar impact to how Terrell is having. Now, Booth, I was higher on Booth as well. Really don't know what happened to him. It's like he got drafted and completely disappeared.
I think it was run defense, and I heard there were injury concerns around his knee, and he might have bombed a couple interviews with teams. So just trying to remember off the top of my head why he fell. I think that's some of the reasons why he did, which makes sense. But at the same time, it's just like,
that's what I'm saying. Even still, though, I mean, there's been so many other good. Byron Maxwell was really good for a bunch of years. My other man that used to play for what's my man name? He got beat by AB real bad.
Cordell Tankersley. Y'all remember Cordell
Tankersley was solid too. I like Cordell Tankersley. I thought he was solid too. It's Brashad Breeland was who I was thinking about.
He just got arrested in Charlotte. I know this is like random. But Brashad Breeland just got arrested. Yeah, he was like stealing cars in Charlotte. This just happened like this week. Yeah,
wow, that's a downfall.
But he was a solid corner for a minute. He was a solid.
Me and my dad was a solid corner on the phone yesterday. We were saying he was a solid corner with the Chico. He was actually telling me, "You heard Brashad Breeland got arrested?" I was like, "No, I ain't know." But yeah, man, I 100% agree. I definitely would like Clemson defensive players to be looked at more. Now, I do want to kind of transition over to the Panthers the last couple minutes here in the pod. Now, we all are Panther fans, obviously. I kind of want to get your synopsis, Jared, a little bit on, some of these picks. You don't have to go into deep detail about each.
Yeah.
But how did you feel about Leggett, Jonathan Brooks? I think, to me personally, I think my favorite pick in this draft is probably Jatavian Sanders because of where you got him at. So that's probably my favorite pick because I had him like in the second, early third, and you got him in the fourth. So I think that was a pretty good move. But how do you feel about the Panthers draft and like what we did in the draft? And just kind of give me kind of like how you feel about some of the players we drafted.
So I'll go ahead and start out by saying the Panthers did what they needed to do in this draft, and they got players they had convictions on early in the draft. They had a conviction on Leggett. They traded up for him. They had conviction on Brooks. They traded up for him. They had conviction on Trevor Wallace. They were able to get him by trading back and I'll say they even had conviction for Sanders. They added talent around Bryce Young, and I think people tend to look at like the pre-draft notions and some of the narratives and some of the agendas that we saw on Twitter throughout the last several months. There are definitely some accounts I do not want to like try to get into anything with, but there were certain accounts that were like the Leggett pick was bad. Now he has to have like over 1,300 yards and 10 touchdowns in his rookie year. I'm just like, slow down. That's like elite numbers for any wide receiver.
Anybody.
Like, like, why are we expecting that from the 32nd overall pick in the draft?
Right.
But they got players. They added basically depth all over where they needed to, except at some positions. Like I wish they added a center, a natural center.
Yeah.
I wish they added more edge rush depth. I wish they added a little bit. I thought they could have gotten a better corner, but you know, it is what it is. It is what it is.
Yeah.
They added depth at linebacker, which I think was important. They got Trevin Wallace, who's going to be a future starter. They got Michael Barrett, who's going to provide depth and also special teams impact while he's here in Carolina, if he's able to make the team. I assume he'll make the team because earlier today I ended up watching some of his film from Michigan. Didn't get the chance to evaluate him pre-draft, so went into a little film review, and I was like, he's got impressive short area bursts. He's got impressive range. There's some aspects in coverage I'm just like, I don't know, but he comes downhill very quickly. He can wrap up and tackle despite having a more like smallish, compact frame. He's like 5'11", 232, so he's a bit of a smaller frame. Think of it as or just a size comparison. It's more Nick Bolton from a size comparison, but he's not. You're not drafting Nick Bolton in the 7th round.
Right.
I think around this time you're drafting Nick Bolton in the 1st round.
Yeah.
But I look at the picks. Leggett, you add a weapon around Bryce Young. Brooks, you add a good runner behind him in the backfield, and also add another weapon that can provide an impact on 3rd downs, especially as a receiver and in pass protection. You get a linebacker who flashes in coverage, flashes as a tackler downhill, has the size, has a physical athletic profile, plus some baseline tools to develop and become a really quality starter for Carolina at the next level. Then you go Sanders, who the Panthers needed as a receiving tight end. They got one with Sanders, who's a good athlete, catches the ball well, runs good routes. I mean, you got yourself a really solid number 2 tight end in that aspect. I think he comes in, becomes the number 2 tight end, earns that on the depth chart during training camp. Ian Thomas is going to be your blocking tight end. I think no matter what, Tommy Tremble is going to be your tight end 1 going into the year, assuming Sanders has a little bit of a transition early on, which I expect him to. I'm not expecting Sanders to come in and have the most receiving yards by a tight end since Greg Olsen, or at the tight end position since Greg Olsen. But I look at Shaw Smith-Wade, who's going to provide competition and special teams impact at nickel and special teams. Then, of course, Michael Barrett, then Jalen Crumedy, who's going to add some rotational value behind Derek Brown and A'Shawn Robinson at the 5 tech or the 4 eyes. So I think fans were angry at the day 3 selections and the Trevin Wallace pick just because they probably weren't familiar with their game. Yeah. And I saw someone was commenting at me and saying, well, the Trevin Wallace pick is just DJ Johnson all over again. I'm like, Trevin Wallace, look, and you guys heard me in space last week. You asked me if I watched DJ Johnson. I said, if you remember the space, if anyone watching remembers this space, I think I don't know if it was Cam or it was Tony that was like, Jared, did you end up watching
That was me.
Did
That
you?
was
It was
Cam.
you. It was
Yeah.
Cam. Cam asked me if I was watching DJ, if I watched DJ Johnson's tape pre-draft. I was like, fuck no. No, why would I? I didn't think he was going to get taken. I didn't think he was going to get taken in until like late day 3, let alone in day 2 of the draft.
Yeah.
And then I see him get picked. I'm like, all right, cool. All right, sure, why not? All right, he's a 25-year-old rookie who doesn't have a pass rush arsenal.
And he's 25, by the way.
That's what he said. Yeah.
I just
That's funny.
God bless Scott Fitterer, man. I hope he's doing well. But you know, Trevor Wallace is definitely not DJ Johnson. Trevor Wallace was one of the better linebacker prospects in the draft. He's a little raw, but again, the baseline is there for him to be a quality starter at the next level. You're going to see him on the field at the next level. I think he's going to provide an impact on third downs and coverage. You'll see him in the rotation. I don't see him being like an every down backer right now, but I think by year 2 and especially year 3, he's going to be a starter at linebacker, at Mike linebacker on this defense, assuming it's still at a 3-4 or an odd front defense. If they ever change it back to a 4-3, I think he's probably going to be a Sam linebacker, or he's going to play Will just because of his coverage ability. But he was a team captain. There were a lot of good reviews on Wallace as a prospect from the interview process, and he brings to the tenacity and the motor that I think Dan Morgan really appreciates at the linebacker position. So you get that with Wallace. But everything about the Panthers draft, I was like, rock solid. Didn't have really any issues with it. I understand people being upset about trading up for a running back, but you know, at the end of the day, you're surrounding Bryce with talent. You're adding depth defensively, and especially potentially a potential starter in Trevin Wallace at linebacker. You have concerns at center, edge.
Yeah.
You're going to have and again, you're not going to fill every need during the draft process or even during the offseason. It is what it is, and I do think the Smith-Wade selection kind of gives you a hint of like, okay, it seems like that Stephon Gilmore is going to be a serious possibility over at least this month. It could happen this month. It could happen next month, but it feels like the only place that Gilmore would probably want to play in the league right now is in Carolina, and especially from what he's heard with this staff, with the defensive staff, with Dan Morgan. I think he would be a great addition to the defense overall.
I hope so.
I'll give you, and one more thing, I'll give you one undrafted free agent that I think that's been talked about on Panthers Twitter, Jalen Coker. I was watching his film before the podcast, and I was like, this guy might make the team. There's a good chance he might make the team. If he doesn't make the team, he's a practice squad guy at worst. But it wouldn't surprise me if he made the team and Terrace Marshall ends up being the odd man out. That's a very real possibility, but again, we do have a tendency of like falling in love with a potential undrafted player.
Yeah.
Like last year with Wright, and then several years ago with Kieris Garrett. So
what was the white dude wide receiver from Ohio State that was on the squad last year?
CJ Saunders.
CJ Saunders. He was another one that got that type of idea. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
But I think for me, kind of building on what you were saying though, just really I walked away impressed with the draft. I felt like I'm kind of like you. I think corner should have been a position that they took a little bit more seriously in the earlier rounds. But at the same time, I kind of understand the value that head coach, man, Canales was thinking of. You know what I'm saying? Like the real thing that we're looking for in year 2, we gotta get Bryce Young to feel confident in this offense, and we got to surround him with some help. That's what the Liggett pick was about, and that's what the Jonathan Brooks pick was about for sure. Because those two guys, they're probably going to come in, like you said, they're probably going to come in and be key contributors right away. I mean, Liga is probably going to be your wide receiver, 2 or 3. You know, he's going to be on the field. Yeah, he's going to be on the field.
At worst, wide receiver 4. At worst.
Yeah, at worst. You know what I'm saying? But he's getting playing time. We know this. You know what I'm saying? And then Brooks is going to be at least your RB2 behind Chuba, probably. You know what I'm saying? If not RB1, like you said. Go ahead.
I have a bold prediction for training camp or for training camp cuts, and it pertains to the running back position. I think you guys may already know what this might be. Miles Sanders gets cut.
You think so? I mean, I can see it.
I can see it too.
It's not crazy. It's not crazy, especially if Brooks can get back and be healthy and he looks the part. I mean, I can see them moving on.
I said this on the 4-Man Rush podcast last night with Kevin, and I was like, could happen, especially if Brooks impresses during training camp off a torn ACL. Is it likely? No. But could it happen? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I do think, especially if they feel like Raheem Blackshear can provide a change of pace, and Brooks can probably provide a little bit more explosiveness and ability on third down. But you know, I really do hope Sanders turns it around in year 2 and ends up, of course, making the team, being at least RB2 or RB3, having some sort of change of pace type of impact. But, you know, I think drafting Brooks kind of just, you know, this is going to be Sanders last year in Carolina. Assuming he doesn't have like a breakout season this upcoming year. But it doesn't seem likely he's going to be back on the team in 2025.
Yeah. As far as how I feel about the draft, I think the Panthers did a really good job. I kind of agree with what you said, Jared. I think they did what they need to do in this draft. They got players that they needed. And I think with the Panthers, and I keep telling folks, this is going to be a 2-year process minimum, maybe even 3. And I think, you know, with them not addressing corner, not addressing center, not addressing those edge rushers, when you look at next year's draft, that's kind of what's strong. Edge rusher.
Edge. Oh my gosh. Edge and corner is so much fun.
They are deep next year at edge and corner.
So, I mean, they may not even be in a position to draft some of the top edge rushers potentially. I mean, of course, it's May of 2024. We got another 11 months until the 2025 NFL draft. But just looking at early, I'll just list out some names. Will Johnson from Michigan, Travis Hunter, who can play both ways. From Colorado, you got James Pierce, who just has unreal explosiveness off the line of scrimmage. And
is from Charlotte.
Yes, and from Charlotte. So it would be a great homegrown talent, natural, fits perfectly. Malachi Williams from Georgia.
Yeah.
Gosh, I'm trying to think. There's another one I'm missing. Abdul Carter from Penn State, who's going to transition from linebacker to pass rusher. I think being an edge rusher is going to be a much better fit for him in his career trajectory at the next level. And I think he's going to be very productive next year. It wouldn't surprise me if Carter is the first pass rusher taken in next year's draft.
Yeah, that's what a lot of people saying.
Yeah.
But you got James Pierce. Yeah, James Pierce from Tennessee. So I think next year is going to be a really good draft class, too. So, and to be honest,
it's going to be.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
I'm so excited for the defensive class next year. It's and next year might be a little bit lower in terms of quarterback talent. I will say this though, I'm going to be higher on Jalen Milroe than most. I was impressed with what I saw during the spring game, and I feel like if that translates to this upcoming season, I could see him being selected in the first round. Because he's got an elite arm strength. He is an elite runner. If he is a little bit more consistent overall with his body mechanics and his overall accuracy, that's going to be a first round player in my opinion.
He can be special.
Yeah, he could. There's a couple quarterbacks I think could really just skyrocket their stock next season. I think Milroe's one of them. So I'm not saying he's going to be this next player, but I was having the same feeling with Joe Burrow in 2019. But this is not saying Alabama's going to have the greatest offense of all time. But Jalen Milroe is someone I'm like, you you get him more consistent. He works on his craft this offseason, which flashed a good bit in the spring game. Yeah, that's going to be a fun player next year.
Yeah, no, I agree. I got one more thing I want to talk about before we kind of start closing it down here.
Yeah.
Now, we talked about it before we got on camera.
Mhm.
Cam Newton, always the content.
Oh yeah.
He's
Yeah,
always making noise. He's always. I will say this. I was so happy to see Cam get an opportunity to work with the NFL Network last week.
Yes.
That was amazing. But anyway, Cam Newton came out today, or at least the clips start coming out today from his podcast 4th and 1, and pretty much he came out and said, you know, the Panthers might have possibly screwed up the first overall pick from last year, and said that, you know, at this time, if you're looking back at it, you know, as you know, foreshadowing at this point, you know, he kind of thinks that, you know, AR-15 and also as well, CJ Stroud would have been better picks. I'll kind of give my honest opinion on it first. When you look at it right now, it's kind of hard to argue that. I mean, Bryce did not have a really good season. Now, granted, Bryce was not put in a really good situation. But when you look at what CJ Stroud is already doing, I mean, he might be I think we all probably would agree he's a top 12 quarterback in the NFL right now.
Yeah.
I would probably say top 10, honestly,
He's
in my
top 7.
opinion. Yeah, I mean, I think he's top 10 personally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, you know, when Anthony Richardson, before he got hurt, he was playing pretty well too as well. So he showed flashes early too. So I don't think that's crazy, but kind of like what me and Jared was talking about before we got on, I just think it's kind of too early to kind of definitely say Bryce is cooked. Like I would say in a year or two, we can have this conversation and then kind of be like, okay, yeah, Cam was right. But going off of, if you're just going off what you've seen last year, I mean, at this moment, he's technically right. But if you're going off what possibly could be, I think Bryce ceiling is still high. I still really believe in Bryce.
Absolutely.
I think he at least deserves, honestly, I think this year and next year personally, because I've always been that way about quarterback evaluations. I always think the quarterback deserves at least 3 years and then go from there. But what do y'all think? What do y'all think about the Cam Newton conversation? How did y'all feel about it? Jared, I'll let you go first since you are our guest.
So like I said to you guys before the show, I wanted to avoid the conversation. Today, I was just like, I do not have the energy to really get involved with this. And especially Stroud and Bryce Young discourse, which can get very toxic very quickly. So here's what I'll say. Cam Newton did say that I do remember him saying he had Bryce Young QB1 in last year's draft. He also has said previously that Bryce Young was in a bad situation in Carolina. I think all of us can agree on that. Now he's saying Bryce was the wrong pick. It not to say it irks me the wrong way, but at the same time, I'm like, it's too early to make a definitive statement on any of these guys. And I'll even say about Stroud. What if Stroud has a very underwhelming season next year? And then there's going to be, and Bryce Young ends up having a great year too. Then then the discourse kind of balances itself out, but it might just like flip the script pretty quickly. And then especially if Anthony Richardson can stay healthy, I think we know what Richardson could do when he's healthy. He is a clone of Cam Newton. Probably a lot more athletic than Cam Newton coming out, which is scary, which is freaky. And that is just going to be a nightmare for teams at the next level, assuming Richardson can stay healthy. So my thing is, I have a hard time seeing Bryce Young struggling next season just because of what we saw against Green Bay. Green Bay made Bryce Young's weapons look average. And what Bryce Young did with average playmaking ability was he put up 310 yards, 2 touchdowns, almost like Carolina, to a comeback victory against Green Bay, who ended up going on to the second round of the playoffs. And if that doesn't tell anyone he can ball out in this league, I don't know what will. I've said this plenty of times. It doesn't matter if you have the top ranked defense or you have the worst ranked defense in the league. I don't care if Bryce Young was playing against a Mike McDonald defense or a Joe Barry defense. If he's balling out like that, that gives you hope as a Panthers fan. That should give you hope. Carolina has surrounded him with anywhere from average to above average talent this offseason, in my opinion. That gives you a sense of hope that, hey, Young could probably ball out with this group of talent, even if they may not have a true elite number one receiver right now. I will say I'm going to be higher on DJ Johnson as a player, just because of what I've seen on film. When I go back sometimes to see how Deontay Johnson did Deontay Johnson did this past season and previous seasons. I still remember the Pittsburgh game from 2 years ago. When Pittsburgh came into town, Johnson was just catching everything coming his way. He cooked Carolina's defense that day. I was like,
Dante Jackson.
I'm like, if there's any way you can get that type of player on Carolina, do it. And they got Deontay Johnson. I was like, let's go. So happy. Johnson can be an impact player in this league. He has shown to be an impact player. He was a Pro Bowler a few years ago.
Right.
Yep.
I look at the talent. I look at the offensive line. It's much improved, especially at guard.
Yeah.
Still iffy about center. And if Icky can take a big step forward in year 3, that offensive line is 10 times better than it was this past season. And I do expect the offense to improve this year. So with that being said, it's too early for anyone to make a good proclamation and definitive statement on the quarterback class from last year and on Bryce Young as a talent, especially after their rookie year. I see comments all the time, see it on Facebook anytime I'm doing a mailbag for Cat Crave. I'm just looking through and like, when are we going to trade Bryce Young? When are we going to trade for so-and-so?
What?
Are we going to draft Carson Beck next year or Shador Sanders? I'm like, man, the season has to get here quickly. But I look at Bryce Young. You saw the flashes almost every game last year. You saw the flashes against Green Bay. You added talent around him. You added a coach that wants to develop him, that wants to work with him, that understands what he needs to improve on. That alone is like, that should give Panthers some hope. And I get some of the pessimism, but I get people have the right to their opinion. Free speech, done deal. Good, great, love it. But at the same time, it's too early to make any definitive statements on Bryce Young. Yeah, we can't do that.
Cam?
I agree. Yeah, I'm kind of with both of y'all. I think I'm definitely agreeing with T for sure when he said that just looking at what they did last year. I know, and the situation is so different.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? For both of those guys. I mean, Indy really saw Anthony Richardson and was like, you know what? They were super convicted on him, and they absolutely tried their best to surround him with talent and to build a great team. And I think, again, this T's guy, but Shane Steichen really did a fantastic job of basically believing in his guy. You know what I'm saying? So I agree that they would probably look at it again and consider taking Anthony Richardson. He would at least he'd probably be that QB2 on the board. I mean, I don't think this is a rough thing to say, especially looking at last year.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then as far as Stroud goes, again, the situation was totally different. I think their Houston, what they did, I think it was more organic in the sense that it just kind of worked out for them. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't think they even thought they were going to be as good as they were last year, but they had the confidence and they had the coach, right? And so, and of course they had the quarterback. So I think, again, looking back at it, of course you would say, I think that's a fair assessment from Cam Newton. I think that's a fine opinion to have. Like, I don't like one thing that a lot of people not understanding. He didn't say Bryce Young sucked. Like, he didn't talk. I went back and I watched the video. I watched a little bit before it. I watched a little bit after it, like on his actual podcast, to see what the context was. And really what the context was, when he was talking about this year's quarterback class and how talent, you know what I'm saying, can really only get you so far. It's about what you do when you actually get on the field. You know what I'm saying? And that's why he was saying that when you look at what they did on the field, if Carolina were to go back and do it again, knowing what they knew now about CJ Stroud and about Anthony Richardson, they would probably, think otherwise. They would probably lean toward, and people forget they almost went Stroud last year anyway.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So that's
I'll say this. There was a drastic difference between this year and last year's draft in terms of information getting leaked.
Yeah.
Very tight-lipped. I was talking to John Ellis at the draft event last Thursday night, and he and I were like, we were both like, so tight-lipped, very tight-lipped this year. And I think that's a great thing to know that you have a front office that's like, all right, we're going to stay tight-lipped, everything like that. The Fitter Rule Reich era, they were spoiling everything. I was like, this isn't normal for any other team. It felt like this year it was just like you didn't hear a peep. You saw like the amount of times Carolina visited and met with Xavier Legette. It kind of gave an indication, but other than that, it was just like didn't really get a proper good information leak that was like that they're going to draft this guy.
Exactly.
But I think the week of the draft, of course, Legette kind of spoiled it. Like, hey, we're going to take it, but they do this with every prospect, but at the same time, it's like it felt like Legette was their guy from the start.
Yeah,
but
you could tell that for sure.
But I'll say this: I do think that again, like you were saying, Cam, if they knew what we knew now last year, I think the debate between who they're going to take at number one would have lasted all the way until they were on the clock that Thursday night last year. It would have been like there was like so everyone trying to guess who Carolina was going to take at number one, whether it was Stroud, Richardson, or Bryce Young. I do think that Panther fans or a lot of the fan base of a certain section of the fan base, F-150 guys, would probably just lose their mind if Richardson went number one overall. But they lost their shit anyway when Bryce Young went number one overall. So it's just like it didn't really matter. It didn't really matter. But at the same time, it's like I think there would have been more of a negative reaction around Richardson.
Yeah.
I don't think Richardson would have survived his first year. No way. But he would have at least given them an elite playmaking ability.
Yes.
That would at least free up the offense overall. Yes. But I still think the record would at least be the same.
Yes. The way I look at it is with Anthony Richardson, I think that Carolina they probably would have they would have gained more yards, especially in the run game. I think they probably would have scored a little bit more points. I'm not saying they would have won games.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I just think that the ceiling, based off of just the pure athleticism, Anthony Richardson could take them to a different place that Bryce Young could last year because he could do more with his legs that Bryce can't do. You know what I'm saying? Now, I'm not saying that's going to
opens up another dimension to the offense, really.
Right. I'm not saying that meant anything on the box score, win-loss record, or in the future. I'm just saying that he probably would have had us in. I'm not saying he's a better quarterback. Again, I'm not saying this. You know what I'm saying? But you know what I'm saying.
He would have added an extra dynamic ability to an offense that lacked it. And look. Bryce Young, I think he offers the skill set to be a dynamic player overall at the position. He's just not. You saw the flashes of him being able to run, be a runner. I think he could be an effective runner when he needs to, and he scrambled when he needed to, not when. All right, I see green grass. I'm gonna just take off. I'm gonna go for it. I was just like, I'm glad we saw him run a little bit more, but I wish that in a better circumstance, he didn't have to run as much as he did. And I'm glad he was starting to learn a little bit overall as the season went along how to slide. I'm like, my boy, you got to learn how to slide at the next level. I don't want you to be Jane Daniels, who's got the smallest freaking frame as a 6'4" quarterback trying to run over defenders when anytime he gets hit, he's just going to be blown backwards. I'm like, you guys saw Jane Daniels throughout the college season. Anytime he ran the ball and got hit, it looked like it was he got popped. Popped. I'm like, and he never slid. I'm like, why aren't you sliding? You're gonna. This is why there are durability concerns at the next level. Just slide, my dude. But I'm not concerned about Bryce Young's durability as much as I was last year, just because he played in the worst offense in the league. One of the worst offenses we've seen in a while. It's like I feel like there is a chance for him to be like, okay, like he held up with a bad offensive line. Let's hope it doesn't happen again for at least the next 10 years. Would be ideal. That's what and at worst, it could be another 3 years. But at the same time, I'd rather have my offensive line keep my quarterback upright. You know, I think that'd be ideal for anybody.
Yeah, me and my dad was talking about it towards the end of last year. My dad was like, "Man, I ain't gonna lie, I'm actually impressed. Bryce was able to hold
That's
up."
what I'm saying.
Yeah, that was probably one of the more impressive things last year. And he did get popped a couple times, and he had to like he left the game a couple. Jacksonville, for example, last year, like he got hit in the back, and we thought, oh God, he's done for the year. But he came right back in. He is a tough son of a gun.
He's a tough kid. Hey, again, Jared, where can people find you? Great episode. You did a really good job. Where can people find you, man, and get your draft analysts and stuff? Where can they find that stuff at, man?
All right, so you can find me on Twitter, or X as it's now called, at JRod NFL Draft on Twitter. X. You can also find my content at catcrave.com or rigosrag.com. I did some content for the Washington Commanders for Cam and I's editor, Dean Jones. Great guy, great human. And if you ever want any chance to have a writing opportunity, reach out to Dean. I highly recommend it. So you can find my content over there at those two websites. I also have a Substack that I post on occasionally. It's called The Final Say. It's FEINAL to kind of include the first part of my last name, and then kind of make it final. Trying to be a little creative there, but you can find me on my Substack too. You can also find me on Threads. I'm starting to post a little bit more on Threads, trying to get engagement going on there. I don't have I don't have like a public Instagram that I do content on yet. I don't have a TikTok either that I do content on yet, but may change now that I'm no longer in school. That might change. I may try to explore a little bit of a different avenue. But again, you can find me on Twitter, JRod NFL Draft. Find my content at Cat Craven Regos Rag.
Appreciate that, man. Jared, again, thank you for coming on, bro.
Yes,
we appreciate you. We love hearing your insight. We love following you on Twitter and following your stuff, man. So we appreciate you for coming on tonight. Again, we definitely got to bring you back too, man. You were great.
For sure. I'd love to be back on.
Definitely got to bring you back. But we're going to go ahead and sign off here, man. Cam, do you got anything else you want to say before we sign off, bro?
Yeah, I was just going to say thank you for everybody in the chat. Y'all was throwing it up today. Appreciate you, Jared, for coming and giving us some of your time. It was really good to hear from you. Like he said, we're going to get you back on here for sure. And we got to do more spaces together too. I think we do.
For sure.
We have a real, we got a real nice dynamic.
We got to get the town hall going again. We got to get it going once Stephon Gilmore comes to town. Hopefully.
Hopefully. I hope he does, man. So we definitely want to link with you more on the socials and everything. So once again, appreciate you for coming. And it's good to see you, man.
Yeah, for sure.
And before we log off too, man, shout out to the supporters and shout out to everybody. We have 400 people in here tonight, man.
Wow.
Crazy. So, Jared, you bring the people out, man. So, shout out to you, man.
I got you.
400 people is in the chat watching us right now. So, I appreciate y'all. I think this is our biggest performance we've ever had. 400 people. That's crazy.
Awesome.
Appreciate y'all's love and support, man. we're gonna end the video on this note, and we'll see y'all next week, man. We'll be back. And once again, man, we'll see y'all next week. Y'all have a good one.